Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, Wings of the Frozen South Photographing Antarctic Birds, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader and Pro Photographer Giulia Ciampini. A little bit more about our presenter. Giulia has been a professional photographer since 2009 and photography teacher since 2011, instructing at institutions including Vancouver College of Art and Design and North Island College, while leading photography expeditions across 17 countries on 5 continents. She holds a bachelor's in biology, a master's in education, and a master's of fine arts in documentary photography and film. Giulia combines her scientific background with extensive photography expertise in every expedition she leads. Thank you for being here today, Giulia. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I always love being here. It's such a joy. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to talk about photographing birds in Antarctica. This is an especially fun topic because I just returned from Antarctica, and in a few days I am heading back there. So today we'll dive into who am I. We'll give you some inspiration about Antarctic birds and photography there. We'll talk a little bit about the birds themselves, and then jump into some art and craft, a little bit of technical, a little bit of the artistic side about photographing birds in Antarctica. I want to focus on composition and behavior because I think those are two very important clues to get really outstanding images. And then we'll have some time for a Q&A at the end. So I'm hoping to talk for about 40 or so, 45 minutes, and then some time for questions. So I am a natural habitat adventure guide and expedition leader, photo guide. I do a lot of work in Churchill, Manitoba, and we do polar bear programs there. It's fantastic. And I'm always looking for really beautiful moments of interaction between bears or individual shots. Churchill is pretty magnificent because it has so many different things in one area. You have your polar bear season, your northern light season, and your beluga whale season, and I'll go guide in all three of those with NatHab. With NatHab, I've also worked in the Amazon, photographing wonderful animals in a very jungle-like condition, do a lot of bear programming, really, really enjoy photographing bears, whether it's polar bears, grizzlies, black bears. I think they're all incredible subjects. And my background many years ago was portrait photography and storytelling. And so that will always come in through any expedition that I do. Not only do I work with NatHab, I also work with their sister company, Lindblad, which partners with National Geographic, and we do photo tours worldwide there. So I do a lot of work in various settings around the world. If you want to connect with me, please feel free to screen capture here. I have my website and my email. I've also created a Substack this year, and this is just where I put some photography articles and try to keep track of the expeditions that I do and all the little insights that I'll gain in each of those. So Antarctica, we'll jump right in. It is an absolute dream for photographers. I was really amazed. We had some incredible, I was there for the past month, just prior to Christmas, and we had some outstanding experiences, not only with birds, but other wildlife, including seals and whales, and some gorgeous conditions. So this would be my first main expedition to Antarctica. So I went in with a very open mind, not knowing what we would encounter, reading extensively, watching as many documentaries as I could watch, but kind of going in with that beginner's heart of what's this expedition going to bring. And so seeing, a variety of species, seeing the gorgeous ice conditions. Our group, we had some very close encounters with humpback whales. We saw some bubble net feeding in the south. We saw some really wonderful encounters, and just the shape of the ice. They often said that, you know, you go to Antarctica for the penguins, but you fall in love with the ice and you return because of the ice. And so one of the mornings, typically the day's quite packed, and it's rare that you would be up in the middle of the night. But one morning I woke up at 3 a.m. and decided to take my camera up to the bow of the ship and captured this panorama. I think it's about 11 shots, and it's one of the most glorious sunsets. This is pretty much unedited except to put the image together. One of the most glorious sunsets that I've ever seen, sunrises. And I learned that if you go to Antarctica early in the season, that October, November, you're more likely to encounter sunrises and sunsets like this on non-cloudy, non-overcast days. But as the season progresses, you know, your January, February, March, you're less likely to encounter this. So I'm very thankful that I woke up in the middle of the night for this shot, and now knowing this in the future, heading during the November, December time, I'll make an effort to go out in the middle of the night and make sure to check for glorious, glorious sunrises, because they really, sunrises, sunsets, they're really spectacular. On the ship, we also have an underwater program, and these are extremely experienced polar divers, and they take the guests down with them underwater, not literally, but with their images and with their videos, and show the beautiful colors and wildlife that exist under the surface of the water. So this is a delightful part of the program on the ship. And then we also had a professional videographer on board, and one of the things that he did was he's able to fly some drones over where we were. And so to see Antarctica from a different perspective, from an aerial perspective, is and was very, very breathtaking. So for future, I know it's quite tricky. I think there's some legalities as to who can fly a drone and who cannot, but that's something that I hope to be able to do in the future. I think it's such a beautiful perspective. I have my drone license in Ontario, in Canada, but I think it's a little bit of a different circumstance when you're working on the ship. So I was hoping to inspire you with some guest images, and of the, I think we had 3 trips, 144 guests per trip. This is on the Nat Geo ship. With that, I saved some of my favorite guest images from all those images that were submitted to the guest slideshow, and some advice that I thought of as I was looking through. And so I always find the best images are ones where people, the photographers, slow down and are very observant of the environment around them, so much so that they're watching more than they're shooting. Looking at the variation in color, variation in tone, and paying particular attention to placement of objects around the scene. This was an incredible sighting of an emperor penguin. I think there was only one sighted on the trip where we were for that month. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it, but I think most of the images that were submitted to that slideshow, many of them included this beautiful emperor penguin. And Antarctica really rewards patience in photographers, patience for the right moment, patience for the right circumstance. We had some guests capture some beautiful birds in flight. And this one I absolutely love, of a penguin. This is a Gentoo penguin charging up the side of the beach, all the water splashing around it. It's a very visceral image. And as I said before, you know, patience is such a virtue. You know this if you're a wildlife photographer, but it really makes an immense difference. This was a shot that one of the guests took, I believe, with their cell phone as a penguin's diving from an iceberg. Really great shot, using burst mode with the cell phone. And anytime, maybe if your cell phone is your primary camera, your burst mode is a great thing to have, or your video mode. And I always delight in images and videos of the circumstances that you're in front of. This was another incredible shot from a guest. This is what's known as a raft of penguins. The penguins will come in great numbers into the water and they'll feed. And it's really interesting to see them come to the surface, and sometimes they'll porpoise out of the water in great speeds. This penguin, it's the Gen 2 penguin. You know this by that white band just above their eye. And these guys are the fastest, swimming up to 22 miles per hour, about 36 kilometers, 4 times the speed of Michael Phelps. And it's just glorious to watch them and glorious to try to capture them as they porpoise out of the water. A few more wonderful guest images. I really appreciate the 3 birds and the triangular composition that's created. It's almost an implied triangle there. The 3 different birds on the left, you have the emperor penguin that we saw earlier, with a Gen 2 to its right and a Adelie penguin to its left. And on the right image, we have a skua and 2 Gen 2 penguins. And we'll see some images later about the skua. They're quite fascinating birds. So I've always been a bird lover and a bird photographer, but more and more and more and more. And I think it's just I think at some point you just reach this stage in your life where this is it. This is what I want to spend my time doing. And I think birding is one of those things. Is it barbecuing or birding? I think I much appreciate birding. So just as a intro in, love predatory birds, love to see how light interplays with subject. The shape and the pattern and the form and the color of birds has always been a big fascination to me. Anytime you can get closer and see the details on the feather, it's almost like this has been woven. I remember going to Japan and they had these weavers and they would weave string by string by string. And this is what this reminds me of, that delicate weaving. The way birds fly in the air, the way that they hunt, there are such fascinating subjects. So I think as a photographer, and if you're here with me, you're likely thinking the same things I am. Birds are incredible subjects. They're often in really beautiful environments, and it is a challenging thing to photograph birds well. It's challenging technically and it's challenging artistically, and I think that's the thing that makes it most fun. So we are going to dive into some tips and tricks about Antarctic bird photography. And with any kind of bird photography, light, composition, moment, and I would also argue connection between photographer and subject is pretty important. There are quite a few birds that come to Antarctica, come to that area. South of the convergence, and the convergence you can see in the squiggly blue line surrounding the Antarctica, in between, South America and Antarctica. South of this convergence, there are about 39 different nesting birds, 7 of which are penguins. We have albatross, petrels, a beautiful cormorant with the most gorgeous eye ring. We have some skuas, a gull, a tern, and a pintail. And those that aren't seabirds, it's just a pipit and a sheathbill. So a smaller selection of birds when you think of maybe the Amazon, for example. But what it lacks in species diversity, it absolutely makes up for in sheer quantity, sheer volume. If you were in, say, the Amazon, you might go through a trek in the forest and you might see, 50 bird species, one of each after a few hour trek, but you wouldn't see any great numbers. in Antarctica, you might come across a colony of thousands of Gentoo penguins, for example. And that might be maybe one of 3 birds that you saw on that outing. So just different ecosystems. But of the species of penguins that exists, there's a few different types of penguins, brush-tailed, banded, crested, large, and some unique, like the little and yellow-eyed. But of the 18 species of penguins, what we saw most was the Gentoo, chinstrap, and Adelie, with the emperor being another penguin that we saw. So penguins come in such a wonderful variety of shape and form, each with their own ecological niche, each with their own particular behaviors and habits and all of that. And they span pretty much, equator and down, with the exception of the Galapagos penguin kind of borders around the equator itself. So we're going to focus more on the Antarctica penguins. And so of the Antarctica penguins, you have the emperor and the Adelie that breed in Antarctica itself. And then as I said before, you have Adelie, chinstrap, Gentoo, rockhopper, and the emperor that breed in and around the Antarctica, but also in the sub-Antarctica islands. So we'll focus a little bit more on the penguins you are going to see if you were to go to Antarctica, the Gentoo, chinstrap, and Adelie. And these are them. Some distinguishing features, for example, if we start with the chinstrap is the one on the top left. We actually see a little black line, almost looks like a helmet strap on the bird, as though it's a hockey player wearing a helmet. That's what I always think of. They're kind of little tough birds, little bruisers. And black bill. On the upper right, you have the Adelie penguin. The Adelie penguin. You see a white band of feathers around its eye, kind of black-orange beak, primarily black head, and very, very sweet penguin. And then the Gentoo, I would say the Gentoo is the one that we saw most frequently. As I mentioned before, it has this white band of feathers above its eye and a bright orange beak, also bright orange feet. And we'll dive into some of the art and craft of photographing these birds. One thing you need to know before you go to Antarctica is if you're on a ship, most of the tour ships are governed by IATO, the International Association of Arctic Tour Operators. And there are particular guidelines that IATO has in place in order to protect the environment and the ecosystem and the wildlife. And there's a number of these guidelines, and they do affect how you approach photography. So one of the guidelines has to do with not spreading avian flu or protecting Antarctica from avian flu. And so with this guideline, you as an individual have to maintain a 5-meter distance from any wildlife. You're not allowed to sit, lie down, crouch, or squat, or kneel. You have to remain standing as you approach your photography. And you can't place anything on the ground, including your camera bag. If you find any animal's behavior changes because of your proximity to that animal, you are too close, you should move back. You can't block penguin highways. We'll talk about penguin highways momentarily. And ultimately, this is great. Like, this set of guidelines is very important. It helps maintain the health of the penguins, but it is good for photographers as well, because you want the most natural images of wildlife. And you don't want your presence to interfere, and any birds behaving naturally will lead to better pictures. So these are some guidelines you need to know before you go in. I know there are pictures online with people lying down on the ground, photographing penguins, maybe penguins crawling on them, seals crawling on them. That is a thing of the past. It's no longer an option. So we'll dive into composition now. Composition, especially with Antarctic photography, can be the difference between a strong image and an outstanding image, or a decent image and a strong image. If you look at an image and it feels chaotic and cluttered and there's no sense of order, and you can't figure out what the subject is or what to look at, you don't want to stay with that image. It feels like a teenager's bedroom. You just want to get out because it's so overwhelming. An image with good composition, that is orderly, that has a subject, that has a sense of space, everything has its place, and you as the viewer can maneuver through that space, will be a much more positive image, and you want to interact with that image for longer. So with composition, we're looking to impose order. We're looking to be very clear on what our subject is and how our environment can support our subject. So let's talk about subject choice. I was amazed, absolutely amazed by the quantity of animals. As I mentioned before, you might get to a landing and come to a breeding colony. Here we have a breeding colony of Gentoo penguins, and you see each of the penguins that's lying down is lying on a small little nest, but you are overwhelmed by choice. You can photograph the larger landscape that you're in. These are panoramas of just getting to the landing, seeing what's there. But as you get closer, you are faced with the decision of what penguin are you going to photograph? What are you going to focus on? How are you going to pay attention? Here is Phil. He is a National Geographic photographer facing this dilemma of who do I focus on and why? And I would say be selective. With so many subjects to choose from, there are better subjects to spend time on. So many of the penguins, unfortunately, will be covered in their own feces, guano, and that's not that beautiful. So if you can choose a more pristine penguin, you're going to get a more pristine image. However, if your image is about the natural conditions of the penguins, feel free to choose any penguin you like. But I think a clean, crisp penguin looks amazing. Choosing what aperture, how much of your image you want to be in focus, how much do you want your image to be blurred, is a decision you'll have to make as a photographer. And in my mind, I'd like to think of if it's an individual and I want it to be all about the individual, the background doesn't have to be an important part of it. I'm going to shoot wide open with an aperture of maybe 2.8. If I have a group of penguins, say these 4 penguins in the lower corner, and I want to see each one of those in focus, but again, I don't really care that the background is in focus. I want to bring more attention to those 4. I'm going to increase my aperture and shoot around f8, maybe f11. And then if I want to balance my subject and the landscape, say this greater scene of the penguin colony with the mountains in the background, I might do f16. Sorry, this should be a little bit higher, f11, f16. So as a photographer, I'm deciding how much of my scene I want to be in focus, and that dictates what the viewer is paying most attention to. So this little illustration here kind of demonstrates this. With a large aperture, you are blurring what's behind and what's in front of your subject. So a large aperture would be an open diameter, lots of light comes in. It would be f2, for example. With a medium aperture, you get a little bit more in focus, either in front or behind your subject, but there's still blur. There's still a little bit less depth of field. And with a small aperture, the diameter of the opening of your lens gets much smaller, This lets less light through, but it also means that more of your image from front to back is in focus, like this penguin colony. The first penguin in the scene and the last mountain in the scene, all of that's in focus, and we're getting that with an aperture, say, of f22, f16, a larger aperture number. So birds are funny because when they look at you, they almost look ridiculous. There's a power in the profile of a bird, whether it's the shape of the beak, which indicates what it eats, or its environmental conditions. And so it's great to get it, looking at you straight, but it's, I think, a more powerful picture in many cases with birds to get the profile and the side of the bird itself. We're always looking for eye contact or some connection to the eyes when it comes to wildlife and bird photography. You can wait for the head to turn, pay particular attention to how the light is hitting the eye. Here you're seeing a little bit more of the golden coloration in this chintrap penguin's eye because of the way in which the light is hitting the eye. I'm always looking for catch lights. So that's that little bit of reflected light in the eye, which makes the eye feel more alive and the subject feel more alive as a result. And I would definitely recommend, instead of spray and pray, which seems to be the default mode of many photographers, is take your time, look for a key subject, do short bursts if you need to do a burst. But you want to be thinking, you want to be intentional as you approach your subjects. You don't want to just be taking pictures and hope that something hits. And with all animals, with all people, with all wildlife, there are micro expressions or smaller gestures that change from second to second to second. So if there's something particular that you're after, you might have to do those short bursts to get that key moment in that. So I would say normally getting low on your subject is an important part of any kind of wildlife photography. But with Antarctica, you can't kneel or lie down or bend or anything like that because of the IATO guidelines. This doesn't mean you can't get low on your subject. It just means you have to be a little bit more creative. Eye level is great because we form this connection. And it can make penguins look equal to the person that, you're not making them look small by shooting above, or you can make them look powerful by shooting below. And the way in which the background cleans up if you're shooting from below is quite nice. So if we can't get down low, how can we do this? There are a few ways you can actually physically, like you are standing up, but you put your arms down, you move the screen of your camera and shoot with your camera a little lower that way, but you physically are standing up, so you're respecting the guidelines. If you're on a Zodiac or small vessel, you can often come while you're on the Zodiac, sit down on the inside and shoot at a bird on an iceberg and shoot from below there. So there's ways in which you can still, if something's on a hill, you can position yourself such that the hill's kind of in front of you, so you can get, even while standing, you can get that eye to eye contact. You just can't physically bring yourself lower on the ground. So one of the things we also think about is background control. How can we make our background support our subject matter nice and clean? So on the left here, I have an image from a guest, and it's this great image of a gentoo penguin holding a rock and bringing it back to its nest, but the guest didn't recognize or pay attention to the penguin behind it walking in the opposite direction. So this makes it a little bit more of a cluttered, difficult to resolve image. And so I would say here, before you press the shutter, just ask, is there anything growing out of the subject? Is there another penguin growing out of the subject that I'm focusing on? Are their feet cut awkwardly? Is the horizon slanted? Is everything in my frame supporting my subject, or is there anything that's going to distract from my subject? So to the right, we have a little bit of a cleaner version of the same picture, the same idea. We have a gentoo penguin with a rock in its mouth, but just more of a cleaner read, more graphic, less distracting. Another example of background control. Here is a picture of an Adelie penguin with a group of people in the background, blurred nicely, which is nice, but it adds a lot of bright competing colors that take your attention away from the bird. Instead, cooler colors, a less distracting background will give your subject more attention. Snow can be great background. Clean snow, dark rocks, blue ice, things like that really make the subject stand out. And try to avoid any mixed or messy backgrounds, as this dilutes that graphic power of your image. And you can always step right or step left, anything that you can do to simplify or control your background. You can have a background with a lot of information as long as you've placed things in a very considered way. So here's that lovely cormorant with that beautiful blue eye ring around its eye during mating season. And we have a very clean background, an aperture of 2.8 with a long lens, and a great distance between the subject and the background blurs that background so beautifully. So lots of ways we can get cleanliness in our background, but this should always be something that we're looking for. So we'll talk a little bit about one of the powers of Antarctica is you can go for very graphic and minimalistic compositions, kind of eliminating everything in the scene but your subject, and it can make for very powerful pictures as a result. So if you look at the water, for example, at various parts of the day, the water might be giving you interesting reflections or beautiful patterns and shapes. That's always nice to play with. Here we had a really outstanding wake-up call. I think it was 5 a.m. There's orcas by the bow of the ship. We get there. It is the most breathtaking, calm water I've ever seen. Never been able to capture an orca. Like see the actual orca under the water because the water is so clear. I don't think that happens often, but it was really, really beautiful. So the quality of the water will affect your images as well. If I could go back in time, I probably wish I would have had a polarizing filter for this moment. And next time around, I'm going to bring one, hoping that this moment happens again, even though, once in a lifetime, in my opinion. So again, these minimalistic graphic compositions, we can kind of direct our attention to the penguin, kind of imply the background, imply the mountains, get this nice diagonal line. Diagonals are powerful. They give us motion, they give us movement, but compose in a way that is very, very minimalistic. The other thing we want to consider when we're out somewhere as beautiful as Antarctica is how powerful the environment is. And this lovely quote by Paul Nicklin, a Canadian photographer who has worked extensively in Antarctica: "The best wildlife images don't just show you an animal, they reveal its world." So this is kind of how we're moving about the environment that we're in. I think also this kind of shot is great for communicating to others what you are up to when you are in an expedition like this. So small zodiac boat, massive, massive iceberg, a little bit of an off-centered composition, giving more room and space to the iceberg, as if the people are an afterthought, as though nature dominates the land, which it does. So here we're looking at the environmental portrait. The environmental portrait, we're giving the wildlife less space in our image and the environment a much greater place. This helps us demonstrate the relationship between subject and background, subject and environment, helping us create a greater sense and a richer sense of the portrait of our species. And so anytime, and we'll talk about this momentarily, anytime I'm in front of a subject, I'll often think, can I take a great big picture of the environment that subject's in, and then can I come closer, and then again a little bit closer and then again a little bit closer. Can I show this subject from a variety of perspectives? And this tip helps you no matter where you are. It is very interesting to see where the animal is. In fact, they've just recently started to create wildlife photography competitions where this is a category in and of itself, the wildlife in its environment. And not only that, there was an organization recently that has had for its wildlife photography competition, that was the one category. That was the thing that they were most interested in. So definitely this should be part of your repertoire. So as you explore Antarctica a little bit more, you're going to see some of the most breathtaking ice, beautiful mountains, really interesting. Just every day it felt like a different place. It was very dependent on weather and conditions and location. It was really neat. As you explore, you'll find ice and icebergs, and these again can be very strong graphic elements. You can look for lines in the ice leading you to your subject. You can look for triangular shaped in icebergs. You can look for holes that you could potentially frame boats or penguins or wildlife in. And so the ice is so different. As you go around, you'll find softer ice, smoother ice, bluer ice, textured ice. Everything has its own unique feel. And I think that's one of the joys of photographing in a place like this, is you can spend a lot of time there. And even if you're in the same harbor, the same area, it's going to look different from day to day. So in this circumstance, we came towards an ice cave, saw some beautiful Antarctic terns, and this was the calmest morning, and it stayed like this only for about 20 minutes, and then back to no mirror, no reflections, nothing like that. So taking advantage of reflections in calm water and things like that. So I mentioned before to think wide, tight, very tight, wide, medium, tight, for example. I think that's always a really useful tip. I remember from a professor I had many, many years ago, he would do a lot of work with magazines, and every time that he would work with magazines, he would have to submit any image as a landscape and as a portrait. So in the default in his practice was he would take an image in landscape and then compose a nice image in portrait mode. So no matter how he saw a scene, he would do both. But I think these are good practices to have. Think wide, medium, close. You can think of, finding a colony, looking for an interaction, honing in on a detail. Or you can think of in terms of, excitement. There's some images that are so calm and so peaceful, and then some images that are very loud and they have a lot of impact and action. And so how you're thinking about your images as a photographer, not only as single images, but how they work with adjacent images, how they work together in a series of images, in a portfolio of images, and even if you're not a professional photographer, how they work together when you share your travel images with your families and friends. Curating and choosing and creating a tight selection is a valuable skill to have, whether you're creating your portfolio or you're just telling your friends about over Christmas dinner about the last adventure that you had. So think in series, not just single thoughts. And as you do try to be as intentional as you can be. So one of the things I always like to pair images together when I think about pairing images is, the wide landscape where this happened, and then tight details. So glistening of water on the penguins, waterproof fur feathers, for example. So we'll come into some more details here, and I think details are wonderful. Again, you have to respect that distance. This time around, I came in with a 100 to 500 millimeter lens, and I think that was more than enough in most cases for maybe whales, for maybe further things, or really zooming into details. I might have wanted a little bit longer, but that was more than enough in many circumstances. And in many cases, I wish I almost had less of a long lens to include more of the interesting environment. But as you're photographing, pay attention to all the different parts. So maybe the webbed feet that change in color based on how much blood flow, and how as a cooling system for these penguins, or the way the feathers, as I mentioned, are waterproof, or how on the right side of this image you can see the color of the foot reflecting in the water droplets on the feathers. So come in for details. Penguins leave their little footprints all over the snow and ice. They often walk in penguin highways, so they'll walk back and forth in the same areas, one penguin after the other penguin after the other. They've packed down that snow really well, and that helps you quite a lot as a photographer, because you know the path that they're going to take and you know where they're going to be. And so looking for that. And these were some images that I found online of some beautiful details that people had taken. These are emperor penguins. The black and white and yellow are emperor, and then the king penguin young is the brown one at the top. And that one, I believe, won an award. And the rationale was there were so many beautiful images of the king penguins, because they're black and white and orange and breathtaking penguins, but very rarely are the young photographed in an artistic way. So it always begs the question of, what are you seeing and how can you see it in a unique way? And so these glorious shots of the eyes with the water droplets, really powerful and interesting. And now we'll move on to behavior and action. And this is where I think penguins and the Antarctic birds are fascinating, so interesting. You can sit by a colony. Oh, why is it not going forward? Sorry. Oh. You can sit by a colony and just watch them be penguins, and you have no end to things to photograph. An animal doing something makes it a story. This wonderful quote by Michael Nicholas, and Nat Geo editor. Photograph behavior, not just form. An animal standing there is a record. An animal doing something is a story. So penguins offer such endless behavioral moments. There is courtship rituals. There's chick feeding and porpoising, and they steal each other's stones to build nests. I'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. The way that they move, how they land, the surf landings, how they toboggan or slide on their bellies, how they fight with one another. Every now and again, you'll see penguins just start slapping each other with their wings, fins. They serve that purpose in the water. And how they sound almost like donkeys. They're fascinating place. So the one thing about photographing penguins is much of their behavior is predictable. If you can watch and learn and see behavioral patterns, you are more likely to be able to anticipate any moments, and you'll catch those great moments. I know Paul Nickland, a wonderful Canadian photographer, got a shot of, I believe it was a king penguin or emperor penguin, launching itself out of the water onto the ice. And he sat, I remember listening to the interview there, and I think he said he took 100,000 images for that one moment. And he had 2 images from that 100,000 images that were the images that he submitted to Nat Geo and had published, and they're breathtaking. But you think about, when I said patience is such an important quality, you think about the patience it took, and 100,000 images for one image. So penguins, we'll talk a little bit about their behavior. They often make a little waddle line. As I said, they walk through these little well-worn paths called penguin highways, and you can catch them in this waddle line. And if you put diagonals in your composition, this gives movement and energy. Penguins often do as their friends do. So if one penguin enters the water, several others in that area will likely follow it. So if you've missed that first penguin, pay close attention. The next one or the next one will likely do the same thing. And so you can catch penguins in small rafts or large rafts, close to your zodiacs or far away. I thought it was fascinating to see a penguin in mixed rafts. So not only the gentoo, but a chin strap here. And watch the body language as they move from different environments. So as they move from water to land, or land to water, or water to ice, or ice to water, watch those threshold moments. This can give more of an action shot for you. And sometimes you can capture that moment of decision, that anticipation of moment, instead of just the moment itself. One shot I would like to get next time I go that I didn't quite get as I wanted to is the porpoising penguins. So here, as I mentioned before, these gentoo penguins, they'll launch themselves out of the water. They are breathing each time that they launch themselves out of the water, but they're maintaining a very, very quick swim. And so I've got this picture of 3 penguins porpoising, but my dream is a really close image, quite low in the zodiac, and hopefully next time I do a presentation I'll have that. But around this time of the year, the chicks are being born in many of the colonies. So going back in January, instead of seeing penguins sit on their eggs, we'll start to see parents come back with food, looking for the calls of the penguins, seeing how they feed their young, and much more of that parent-young interaction. So that'll be really interesting for January, February. And it was, as I mentioned, it's so fascinating to just sit with a penguin colony and watch the different penguins interact. They have to, or they choose to sit relatively close to one another. Part of this is protection from aerial predators like the skua. So they'll come close to one another. But because they are so close to one another, they will sometimes antagonize one another. As I mentioned, there's fights between, but you'll see these, they can get a little bit violent, biting one another or slapping one another to maintain the boundary. So you want to be close to your neighbors in a colony to help protect. You use your beak, you use your body to help protect one another while you're sitting on the egg, but you don't want to be too close. It's that perfect balance. You see images of, or moments where there's birds mating in that mating season. And with gentoos, for example, here, I don't really want to talk about bird mating right now, so you guys can look that up. But this is an image of two penguins mating. Obviously, there's always action shots. They poop on each other quite a bit. I have far too many images of penguins pooping, and sometimes they are the recipients of other penguins' poop. And this is where that point of look for beautiful, clean subjects. I have far too many images of a penguin that's just been pooped on and still stays on their nest because they're protecting their egg. We'll talk just very quickly. You can take a picture of this screen if you like, about how shutter speed works. The short version is if the movement of your subject is slower, you can have a little bit of a slower shutter speed. So for standing, stationary, lying down, slow moving subject, I would probably go around 1/500. As you start to increase the speed of your subject, if maybe fast movements, maybe any kind of interaction or engagement, you might increase your shutter speed 1/800 to 1/1000 of a second. And then as you increase your subject movement, speed more, like birds taking off, birds landing, or birds flying, you would continue to increase your shutter speed if you want to capture birds in sharp motion where you've stopped the motion. It's also really interesting to see some photographers, again, Paul Nickland, I think Rachel, there's a really wonderful photographer, her name is Rachel, and she's been doing a lot of very creative slow shutter speed shots with penguins. I forgot her last name in the moment, but you can also consider that with your photography there. I want to share maybe one or two more stories and then we'll pull it together. And here's an example of the skua. The skua is more of looks like a gull, a brown gull, for example, but it takes on the role of a predatory bird in Antarctica. They are beautiful birds. They are beautiful birds. They're quite large and a little bit, I don't know how to describe this, but they're, they have coordinated attacks to get, for example, a penguin's egg. So here we see an example of this. This is the skua coming in and pulling the tail feathers, the brush tail feathers of the chin strap penguin. The idea here is if the skua can distract the penguin enough, then it's exposing its eggs, and then another skua can come in and take that egg, and then they'll feed off that egg. And so this is, I think the word I was looking for before was predatory. There's a lot of predatory behavior that this bird does, but as a photographer, capturing behavior is really interesting. You're capturing that whole story, and it doesn't really matter where you are. Looking for interspecies behavior, like different bird species, how they interact with one another is fascinating. So here we have a puffin in a razorbill colony. This puffin was trying very, very hard to get down to the water's edge at the base of this rock, and in each case, each of those razorbills would open their mouth, exposing this lovely, lovely yellow yellow coloration, but I don't think they were too happy that the puffin was there. I think puffins get have a hard time, I think. So here we are at another puffin colony, and a Jaeger. Here's a bird called a Jaeger, which is a German word for hunter, and the Jaegers would kind of fly in between the water and the land, and after the puffins had caught fish, they would come back to their nesting ground, and the Jaegers would they do this kleptoparasitism, such that they're antagonizing the bird until it drops its food, and then they'll capture the food once it's dropped. And here we see another gull interacting with a puffin. Again, the puffin has just caught some wonderful fish food. It's coming back to the burrow and is getting antagonized by this gull. So it's really interesting to see how different species interact. I think I'm going to tie it up now here. So I've just come off one wonderful month in Antarctica and have learned a lot about photographing there. But as a photographer, you are always looking to learn more. And I think one of the ways, I'm heading back there in 2 days. And always before any kind of expedition, I always create a list of things that I'd like to do if the situation presents itself. Doesn't always present itself, but thinking beforehand of your photographic dreams and hopes helps you get ready for them. So one example was the killer whales and getting a polarizing filter. Another example is I'm going to be bringing some cameras that have the capacity to do overland underwater shots all in one. I'm trying to think of images that I didn't manage to capture the first time. What can I do for the next time? And so as I'm looking around and working with more and more photographers, I see some of the best images coming from individuals who can see scenes and who can see scenes develop before they develop. So there's this bit of pre-visualization and anticipation. Obviously, the sense of timing is important. You need to understand your camera and how it works, and also have your own voice, your own artistic style, your own way to look and see at a scene and how you want to represent it. But I think most of the greatest photographers understand that misses and failed images are all part of the joy of this. And if you can learn from your failed images to try to microscopically improve, like really small incremental improvements, and then shooting fewer images with more intent. So I can't wait for you guys for whatever your next photography adventure is. And 2026 is coming up, and I hope it is filled with a lot of great moments that you will remember forever. And I'll stop it there. Thank you.
Oh, Giulia, photography webinars are always so good and so beautiful. Your images are stunning every single time. So thanks for that. Straight from the field. You just got back a few days ago. You have a tendency of doing that. She comes back from the field and she gives us an amazing webinar, everybody. That is our Giulia. All right, we only have a few minutes for questions, so I'll just go ahead and dive right on in. Let's see here. When you landed, did you have one or two camera bodies? And if you did only have one, what is your preferred lens choice?
That's a great question. So I came in with two bodies. This is a question I get often. What kind of camera gear do I use? So I came in with two bodies, an R5 and an R5 Mark II. And primarily, the lens that was on my body was the 100 to 500 f4.5 to 7.1. Yeah, and it was a beautiful lens, well suited for the conditions we were in. I didn't bring my 200 to 800, didn't have the room in my luggage. And I think one of the lenses that I wish I had that I didn't take with me was a 24 to 70. I think that would have been well suited for the environment as well.
That makes sense for all those beautiful iceberg landscape shots that you had. That makes total sense. Yeah. Could you further elaborate what exactly a polarizing lens does and why you wish you had it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a polarizing filter is just a filter you attach to the front of your lens. And depending on how much it's turned, it will make the glare on water less. And by doing that, you are more able to see through the water into whatever's underneath. So maybe you've worn polarizing sunglasses. I don't know how much they would have helped in that orca situation because the water was so calm as is, but potentially it could have. And I know we had that same harbor that we were in that 1 week. Then next week, I think the same orcas came to us again. And that day, the water wasn't as clear. And I think the polarizer would have helped me cut that reflection and been able to see a little bit more clearly underwater, into the water.
Great, thanks. I know we only have a few seconds left, but this is a really funny question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Were the penguins' colonies smelly when you were near them?
Yes, that's right, 100%. You can smell them before you can see them. Yeah, it was delightful. Yeah.
Well, all right, that answered that question.
You can close your eyes and find wildlife. It's fantastic.
Well, that was incredible, Giulia. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out her directly. She had all of that great information in the front, and her new Substack is amazing, so go ahead and sign up there. Well, with that, Giulia, do you have any last closing comments that you would like to give us today?
I just want to say, first, thank you, Brooke. You're incredible. And to everyone who joined me today, I hope you guys have the best 2026 and really find some wonderful moments to hold on to.
Could not agree more. Good luck on your next Antarctica trip. And for anybody who's going down, get those photos and send them, and we would love to see them. And I know Giulia would too as well. So thanks again for presenting for us today. And I'd like to
Sorry,
thank everyone who tuned in.
can I
Yeah.
ask one more thing? Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
I've got a daily dose coming up January 30th when I come back
Yeah.
from Antarctica the second time. I have some ideas, but if there's a topic that you guys are interested in, please do email me. It does help me. It would be lovely to maybe answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. And feel free to email webinars as well, webinars@nathab.com. I have a direct contact with Giulia, so I will make sure those questions get over to her. So,
Thank you.
but yes, January 30th. And yeah, thanks for everybody who tuned in. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, give us a call at 800-543-8917 or send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are more than happy to help you. If you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation and the replay will be available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody.